This setup has proceeded before every major rally in Bitcoin's history, and it is once again firing off in the short term here for Bitcoin. So I wanted to update on this, essentially carrying on with yesterday's analysis for the global liquidity index, because it is, well, on the verge of having a continuing signal. So without further ado, let's just jump into it right on over here. I want to first give major shout out and credit to Flicky in the Discord. This is one of the beautiful things about being in the Discord, is that you have geniuses who will post stuff like this, which is incredibly useful. In fact, he was ever so nice enough to also make the indicator itself, the global liquidity index that you see right here, compatible with the skeleton key, which is what I'm going to be using to back test this one. So just to kind of go over the general idea of why this is relevant. First, of course, global liquidity, or the theory is that global liquidity essentially propels or defines the macro cycle, if you will. Like, we're talking about very, very long-term stuff. And essentially, when global liquidity is increasing, then, you generally expect your upwards markets. And when it is decreasing, you generally expect your downwards markets. And of course, when we go into our, when we go into the indicator right here, what he's actually done is he's actually positioned it around this 40 simple moving average, which is the blue line, relative to, of course, the global liquidity index. And anytime that it crosses above, that would open a long. Anytime that it crossed below, that would close that long. And if you would have played this out throughout the full history of Bitcoin, well, you would have had some quite nice statistics over here. It doesn't happen too often. Of course, this is, a very macro look at things. I mean, naturally, the macro picture doesn't change that often. So we don't have too many iterations here. It would have been nice to have a lot more, but that's just is what it is. And we have seen 16 total trades, 75% of those closing profitably. And more importantly, and what I really want to focus on in today's video, is that anytime that we have seen this setup fail, it's looked essentially like this over here, where on the next period after the open, it was essentially it failed, basically. And well, the reason why this is ever so relevant right now is because, one, we got the open signal on the prior period right here. And with Bitcoin about to close the next 5-day period tonight in 15 hours, 31 minutes and 21 seconds and counting, well, it's going to have a chance to not close it. But I should really dial this in right here, because let me actually, this is so hard to see. I apologize, but you can see that the global liquidity index, represented by the yellow line, is really fucking close to the blue simple moving average. So definitely need to see it open well above there for tomorrow, which we'll see on tomorrow's live stream. But assuming that Bitcoin just doesn't super shit the bed in the next 15 and a half hours, it should not close. So we'll see. But again, we'll know for sure by tomorrow. And then of course tomorrow's an absolutely massive day, because we're gonna get the monthly closure for traditional markets, which is gonna massively influence wherever the hell Bitcoin is anyways. So a lot of things to be aware of. But when you look at this setup, if you want to call it that, throughout the history of time, and again, understand that this indicator, and looking at this from the macro picture, is a very new thing right here. So it's very possible that we could figure out much better ways to do this in the future. But this is working, at least for right now. But we've seen this signal before, or at least this open signal before every potential major move to the upside. Now, every time do you get that you have an open signal, is it always a major move? No, because one, some fail, about 25%, and two, you do get some small ones right here, like we saw relatively recently in November, which opened at about 96,500. It did close profitably, but just a couple $1,000 up from that entry. And for a macro sort of strategy like this, I mean, that's not going to be super relevant. But of course, you can see throughout the full history of Bitcoin here that generally, anytime that you've gotten this open signal, it has been the green light for, a major continuous run. So I do think that is very relevant for right now. And more importantly, it will be closing tonight. So we'll have a big update for tomorrow. Now, this setup can very likely and very, very, very likely does bleed on into the 2-day time frame RSI versus EMA setup over here. Again, I'm bringing the same setup up that we spoke about in the middle of this month, around the 15th of January, where it fired off. It was a super simple setup. setup. Simply the 2-day time frame RSI closing above the exponential moving average indicates open position, and when it closed below, close the position. And you can see that the last one actually did close profitably. Wasn't a huge trade, to be fair, but opened at about $100,000, closed at a little bit above 102. Better than losing money, I suppose. Of course, if we go ahead into the full history of Bitcoin and backtest this, we can see that there have been many iterations. In fact, 218, and about almost 36% of them have closed profitably. So it is technically more likely to fail than not. But when it does work out, you can get some pretty big moves. And I would suspect that this setup must kind of go hand in hand with the global liquidity setup over here if we're going to see this move transpire in the very proximal future, if you want to call it that. But yeah, you can see that the 2-day time frame is also going to be closing tonight alongside the 5-day time frame, and it's going to have a chance to open yet another position right here for this setup, and that will be confirmed as long as Bitcoin closes above. Let me reference Caretaker's RSI right here. Yeah, 103,000 US dollars by the end of today. So if you do see it above 103,000, which right now it is well above, then that will open up another position. Also, as we look at Caretaker's RSI, it will be a phantom drive of hidden bullish evidence here. And then at that point, does Bitcoin have a real chance to break out here? Perhaps yes, as we do look at the trade analysis statistics. Again, we're using the Quant Prime service to generate these back tests, both for the Global Liquidity Index and also this as well, by the way. And this one has had a pretty high average winning trade. I do want to get rid of some of that earlier data just because I do think that, it can be a bit misleading. Maybe we back test from 2015 rather than the full history of Bitcoin, because the full history of Bitcoin, the early trades were just so massive that I think that they really throw everything else off. And yeah, the average winning trade when we just incorporate this data is about 21%. The average losing trade about 369. So again, it is technically more likely to fail than not. But if it does fire off, well, what would 20% up from essentially where Bitcoin is at right now look like? That would put Bitcoin well above $120,000. In fact, closer to $125,000. And also we can come up with an average amount of days or an average amount of bars for that to play out. And for winning trades, about 11 bars. So that would be 22 days on a time frame like the 2-day time frame. Again, there's going to be some variance in there. These are averages after all, but gives us kind of a general area of interest, point of interest upon an actual fall through on this setup right here. So anyways, that is also going to be potentially combined with, on the 5-day time frame, stochastic momentum freshly turning on to the upside here. That will officially happen upon tonight's closure if Bitcoin closes above 103,750. So we're seeing kind of that 103 area come up a few times now. And CME is also closing its own 5-day tonight as well. And this one very likely to cross the upside because, well, the pivot, the momentum pivot is a little bit below $99,000, which Bitcoin is, very, very far away from right now on CME. In fact, CME trading above 106. So that can, that would probably be a pretty damn good signal. Of course, it's a long day left to go. A lot can happen, but so far so good. Just be aware of where those major numbers come in around, because as we go further into this, I want to get into the HPDR. The HPDR on the daily time frame is showing the median right where? It is showing it right at $105,000. So Bitcoin's actually a hair above it right now. If Bitcoin closes above that, I would say you kind of have the trifecta of all these setups kind of working out together, where you do see the global liquidity very likely, continues to keep this position open. Plus the 2-day RSI EMA setup will be confirmed above that price point. And then also, of course, the 5-day stochastic oscillator will be continuing to the upside. So actually it's not a triple, but it's quadruple. It's quadruple because this would be the fourth thing right here. And at that point, does Bitcoin essentially retest the highs at 108, 109? Very possible, yes. Of course, if we go over here to CME, same sort of thing. This one, we probably at least test the median relatively soon, but doesn't necessarily imply that Bitcoin will close above it. In fact, it would say that would potentially be a resistance point or a little bit of a pullback point, and that is for CME just below 108. So, may be relevant for the more short term. Let's also go over, or should we go over, is there anything to be aware of on the 5-day time frame? I actually did not prepare this, so I don't exactly know, but the 5-day time frame, now that I look at it, there's something incredibly interesting right here for CME. Bitcoin did close the last 5-day time frame above the median. This 5-day period is not just going to close above it, very likely, but also open and close above it. And so continuing to hold on to a region like that, again, is a good indication that Bitcoin is going to at least try and move somewhere around the 38.2 level. And that is, again, $120,000. Again, this would probably happen, somewhere in February, maybe around the maybe around the midpoint to end of February, something like that, perhaps. But just general areas of interest. Of course, if Bitcoin crashes, if Bitcoin comes down below the median by end of day, then, there's still the very high potential for, a much greater pullback with Bitcoin coming back down to the low 90s. But until that happens, I think it's better to be still on the side of the boo laws here. Kind of the same shit that we've been saying for the past, week and a half now. It's like, or maybe even 2 weeks now. Just the trend is your friend. Anyways, on that note, we should also go over here and check out some daily price statistics, just see what Thursday is most likely to do. Thursday, actually a little bit more weighted in favor of negative closures rather than positive closures, with 53.5% of all Thursdays since 2024 began closing negatively. However, I'm mostly interested in the average returns for this, which you can see if Bitcoin plays out the average returns to the upside, that would give a range high about $106,000. And if it were to come back down to the downside, maybe around 102. By the way, I forgot to go over the 5-day, median right here, which is $103,730. I'm actually curious what spot price action is looking. Wow. Spot price action used the median as a nice bouncing point after reclaiming it on the prior closure. That is also a very compelling, very compelling thing. Of course, it's a long day left to go for these major closures, but you can see how all of the dominoes kind of align with each other. And, let's just call it like above about 103-ish region. They should all be really confirmed, I believe. So we'll see tomorrow. Obviously we'll come at it tomorrow and see what the actual official numbers are, but for right now, things look very interesting. So other than that, I'd like to once again wish you the best of best. It's been a nice little stream here. I should let you know, or if I forgot to let you know earlier, my fucking brain just broke for a second there. Of course, I do want to give a major shout out, if I didn't already, to Flicky in the Discord for creating this indicator that was compatible with our Quant Prime service, so we could actually backtest it. And just to let you know, if you want to join on in with the Discord, it's free to do. There's a link in the description below, and you can have all sorts of cool conversations. Some of them very fruitful, some of them not very fruitful. In fact, we got some of the best trolls, I believe, in the whole internet in the Discord server, but it actually makes it quite fun. Anyways, that's where we'll leave things for today. As always, I want to wish everyone the best of best. Take care, much love, and see you hopefully for tomorrow on a nice little live stream.